Okay, and question number 4 was the Bible mentioned Midian 39 times in King James Version, and it is clear that Mountain Horeb and Mountain Sinai are located in the land of Midian. Please explain in detail the location of Midian, right?
That's a big job there to just identify the location of Midian based on the historical sources. I mean, that's a long process to go through right there.
But you can just briefly insist that the why you think Midian is in Saudi Arabia. Some people insist that the Midian is spanned through between the Sinai Peninsula and Arabia.
Right.
That is the issue.
So we have the report of Josephus, Eusebius, and Saint Jerome that all point to Midian being in Arabia. But I have to go into one point in this question. First of all, it's not clear that Mount Sinai was in Midian. It's in proximity, but it probably realistically was not the inhabited part of Midian. It was reached on the far side, the backside of the wilderness by Moses.
Right.
And the wilderness separates the highlands from the coastal Midian settlement area. So the Bible never says that Mount Sinai is in Midian. It gives a sense that it may be in proximity based on Moses.
Right.
And then secondly, I think you're aware of this, that there's no Mount Horeb. Okay, Horeb was a region in which Mount Sinai was located. So Sinai was the peak of the region of Horeb.
Right.
And so I think it's important not to call it Mount Horeb, because some people think that that was the name of the mountain, but that was the name of the region it was in. And the prime evidence of that fact is that numerous times it says that something happened on Mount Sinai. The Hebrew word is al, on Mount Sinai. It never says that anything happened on Horeb, only in Horeb in the Hebrew. So things happened in Horeb and things happened on Mount Sinai, which was in Horeb. So I would stay away from using the phrase Mount Horeb at all. It would be the mountain of Horeb, meaning it's in Horeb. Secondly, in the previous question, where you say they went back towards the Red Sea, I think once we established that Yam Suf is the name of the body of water, not the Red Sea, that you probably ought to stick with Yam Suf as the term. The Greek idea of the Red Sea didn't include the Gulf of Aqaba. So there's no reason to call the Gulf of Aqaba Red Sea when we know it's the Hebrew Yam Suf. And we know historically that the Red Sea didn't include the Gulf of Aqaba because they didn't know about it. So, I would tend to emphasize Yam Suf more than Red Sea later in the story.
Okay. And then question number 4, again, that the, when you mention about the Midian, you can mention about the historian people, Josephus and the, all other, historian people.
Okay.
And then question number 5, this is about the same longitude things, right? And then number 7 was the marble thing that we already mentioned.
Yeah. Now, I don't agree that those are Moses' 12 pillars.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, people say that those were Moses' pillars, but I think that the pillars, the Massa boat that Moses erected to the tribes were uncut stones. And I don't think they set up a whole quarrying operation. They were only at Sinai for 11 months. And it sounds to me like they set up the altar and the Massa boat for the tribes relatively early in their stay. And I don't think they set up a whole quarrying operation to do that. It doesn't make sense. But the quarrying methods are evident in the quarry relate to probably 100 to 150 AD in the Roman Nabatean period. The quarry pockets in the cut lines were designed for uniform iron wedges that pretty much places it in the Roman period. In my opinion, the pillars were probably a memorial made many years later in the Nabatean Roman period that by perhaps Jewish people living in Arabian diaspora that knew that was Mount Sinai. But I don't think it had anything to do with Moses whatsoever.
Okay.
I think that's...
You agree that this is the place of altars, right?
I believe most logical explanation would be a sacrificial altar with corrals.
Right.
Yeah.
I only focus on those questions then. Okay, regarding the water flowing from Mountain Sinai, we already talked about the water flowing.
Yes, and I will probably throw in an image or two of the seep wells that were constructed to harvest water, because that's the significant thing. Not so much that there was stream flow, but there was harvesting of water, large water needs. I mean, that huge effort to build these seep wells. And you can't explain it unless you have a large population that needs that water.
Okay, and then number 10 was the Mountain Sinai is Jebel Akela, you mentioned, right? Mountain Sinai is in Jebel Akela. So what is the difference between Jebel Lawz and Jebel Makala? Because most of the people who visit this area, they say the Mountain Sinai is the Jebel Lawz.
The mountain range, the entire range is called Jebel Lawz. The range has a number of peaks. 4.5 miles southeast of the peak of Jebel Lawz are the peaks of Jebel Makla. It has 2 peaks. And then there's another mountain immediately to the south, Jebel Haifa, that has a similar height of peak. The reason Jebel Makla is singled out as that part of the Lawz range is because it's accessible from the Wadi Abiyad on the eastern base, and you can actually climb Jebel Makla, whereas the actual Lawz peak is set 4 miles to the west off the Wadi, and it's very difficult to get to it. And then combined with the accessibility of the base of Jebel Makla, you have the altar and the seep wells right there that don't have a good explanation apart from the Exodus.
Question number 11 is blackened top of Mountain Sinai as a result of God's descent as described in the Bible, or was it due to the natural phenomena such as a volcanic activity? I know your answer because it's in the book, but that was a question, because so many people argue that was not the God's descent. I think we need to make it clear, about these things. Even if we support the that mountain is the Mountain Sinai. If that blackened top is not a God's descent, then we have to mention about it, right?
Yeah. Well, the bottom line is that Jebel Makla is not a volcano and never was. Yet the black material is volcanic basalt, and the origin of the black volcanic basalt was on the seafloor in great antiquity, and proof of that is the marble deposits that are found in the basalt. Marble is metamorphic limestone. Limestone is formed on the seafloor. So it was formed on the seafloor with the volcanic basalt, and through geological processes was elevated to its present 6,000 plus feet above sea level. So in that question there, I'm an old Earth creationist. I believe in tectonic plate theory, and the Earth is millions of years old. And I think there's a lot of proof about processes that generated the mountains that are in Midian and the height of the basalt and all that. But then you're going to have people that are strict 6-day creation, 6 24-hour days, that don't want to buy the geology. So that I run into that question or conflict quite often from people.
Yeah. Okay. And the next, question number 12 was about the Kadesh Barnea. You made a really, fantastic map over here. You locate the Kadesh Barnea under Negev, desert, and then you put the wilderness of Paran here, and then wilderness of Jin over here, right? And then Adam here, and then Araba Valley here. So that was the question about it.
Yes, the reason that Kadesh Barnea is misunderstood or misplaced because of a mistranslation in the Bibles. When the boundary of Canaan is described and the boundary of Judah is described in Joshua, the word Negev appears many times. And the translators translate Negev as south. That throws the whole dimension and position of the boundary line off, because Negev actually was a place. It was the plateau region below Hebron that I have on the map circled as Negev. It was a place, not a direction. And so by mistranslating Negev as south, they confused the location of the boundary, and Kadesh Barnea was right on the boundary itself. And if you confuse the boundary, then you misplace Kadesh. So it's
Right.
kind of a complicated story, which I went into many pages to describe in the book.
Right.
And Aaron's tomb, Petra,
Yeah, I've been there several times.
on the south side of Petra.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with Kadesh.
You know,
I mean,
David Roll insists, that is the Kadesh Barnea, David Roll.
yeah. Well, the big argument against that is that during the Exodus, the Hebrews were forbidden to transgress the land of Edom. And when they were in Kadesh Barnea getting ready to move north, they sent emissaries to both Edom and Moab asking if they could pass through their lands, and they were denied. And as a result, they had to go south through the Arab Valley down to the head of the Gulf, and then to Etzion Geber and come up on the east side of the Edom mountain ranges. And so the fact remains that Israel during the Exodus was not allowed in Edom. And where was Petra? It was right in the center of Edom. And so why would they go there and bury Aaron? It absolutely makes no sense at all.
Right. So number 13 was the kind of overall question. Okay. When comparing the Sinai mountain in Egypt with the one in Saudi Arabia, why do you think Egypt, Mountain Sinai, theory is the problem? Why do you think Mountain Sinai is in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, the bottom line is the location of the Hebrew Yam Suf. Once you locate that, the mountain has to be on the far side of that body of water, which excludes the Sinai Peninsula.
Yeah, that is about it. And then we're gonna interview, James Hofmeyer and Brian Wood. Some of the scholars you may not like it, but they want to include the some scholar who is against the Mountain Sinai in Arabia, a scholar. So they will include James Hofmeyer, and then they will include the Steve Mosher. He's another against the guy. And then I know that Brian Wood does not support the Mountain Sinai in Arabia. He support different mountain, but he has a lot of contribution in finding out the truth of the fall of Jericho.
Yes, I respect Bryant Wood, and I'm very confused as to his lack of geographical logic in his idea about Mount Sinai. And of course, Hofmeyer and Bryant Wood both missed the point about Yam Suf too.
Right.
They're still stuck with the crossing back next to Egypt.
Right. Until they die, they will not accept. They will not repent. Okay.
But you consider it took 2 months to reach Mount Sinai from Egypt. That mountain of Bryant Wood is awfully close to the boundary of Egypt to take 2 months to reach it. There's not enough places in between to account for all the biblical encampments, but
right,
that's what they believe, and that's fine.
And we are going to you may not like him, but we are going to interview Douglas Petrovich as well, because our question to Douglas is about linguistic issue. I know that he doesn't support the Mountain Sinai in Saudi Arabia either. Probably his study may be a good contribution about the finding out the letters, the language in Exodus area. That's what we like to focus on.
Yeah, well, I think a variety of opinion is healthy.
I'm really excited to see you, Dr. Grant. I think probably when your health condition becomes better, then we probably like to have your lecture series, like Tim Mahoney did long time ago. It's gonna be really different, because when Tim Mahoney that time, most of people don't know about the existence of the Mountain Sinai in Saudi Arabia, but now it becomes different because so many people visit over there.
Yeah, the paradigm in the public has shifted, and the Hofmeyers of the world who want Yam Suf to be a little marsh, they're kind of being left in the dust, I think, on the way the information's coming out and people are becoming aware.
Dr. Glenn, stay healthy, and then you're gonna have a lot of things to do.
I have one cynical statement to make, and that is that David Roll famously has said, well, you show me one chariot in the Gulf of Aqaba and I'll believe that the event happened there.
Right.
And I say to Hoffmeyer, you show me one chariot in the dried up Lake Bala, and I'll believe you're. And Lake Bala is nothing but a sand pit, and archaeology would be very easy there. I mean, if there's a massive Egyptian army buried in Lake Bala, you'd think that stuff would be turning up, things would have been found, and be easy to document such a debacle in that area. There's no water to deal with, but nothing's been found there. So, they can talk about Lake Bala, but it just seems that they don't really have any evidence which would logically be there in great quantity.
Yeah, believe it or not, so many scholars in South Korea, they are following James Hoffmeyer's theory. There are many of the scholars, after they study in Israel, they following the Israel Finkelstein theory. Israel Finkelstein do not believe the Bible.
Right.
That's a big problem.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
So that's why I want to do this.
Now, I have one other question I forgot to ask you. I noticed an image of Ron Wyatt and his gold-plated chariot wheel. Are you bringing him into the topic?
No,
okay.
I'm not.
Now, you know that gold chariot wheel is a fake.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. For a long time, people suspected that it was not in deep water because you could see the water ripples in the video of it. I traveled with Ron Wyatt, so back in the day, I was around him and knew people. The idea was that he had planted that simply to create an image of what something could look like. And then the first time he said it was actually in the Gulf of Aqaba, lied about it, then he had to stick with that going forward. Now, since people have discovered that the shape of that wheel is identical to cast iron pulleys manufactured in India, and they've actually posted the pictures of the cast iron pulleys that have exactly the same shape as this supposed gold-plated four-spoke wheel that Ron Wyatt found. That whole thing has been cleared up beyond any question that it was a fake.
So many, people in South Korea, they don't like him. So I don't want to bring up. What about the wheel, found by the Dr. Moeller?
He didn't find a wheel. He found coral formations that he said could be a wheel. But the thing you have to ask yourself, okay, there may be wheels of various sorts at the seafloor, but maybe could it be refuge from thrown overboard from a ship in World War I? Could it be from a sunken ship several centuries ago or a millennium ago? Without actually doing the type of analysis you need to determine what's there, it's all supposition. People's imaginations sometimes enlarge things beyond reality. I don't think anything's been found in the Gulf that's really substantiates the loss of an army there, but I don't think they've looked in the right places either, because they haven't been able to look deep enough. It needs to be scanned at the depths below which coral grows. You need to do a wide scan of the bottom where there's no obstructing coral, and that's where you're going to find a debris field if it's there.
Right. I read his book. His book said he dated the wheel that he found in the ocean. And then this, a four-wheel chariot is, some century, and then five-wheel chariot, six-wheel, and so they have hard to believe.
I had taken Leonard Moeller to Saudi Arabia with me in 2003. Mm-hmm. And so I've been acquainted with him through the years, certainly have his books and talk to him about various things, but I don't think there's a good case for evidence yet. And again, I think if there's a spot that it happened, it's going to be at Nueva. But I think that the wishful thinking of investigators has maybe created ideas that are not well substantiated. And I put Leonard's in that category.
Have you ever met Dr. David Kim, South Korea?
No, I haven't. I'm very familiar with him, yes.
I know him very well. He said he bought from a Bedouin tribe with $5, long time ago. And then there are some letter, in the back side and front side, there are some letter. And then he showed it to Dr. Miles Jones. And then Dr. Miles Jones, in his book, he mentioned about this letter in his book. And then he said that this is the first alphabet letter written about the Yahweh. He said that 4 letters is about the Yahweh.
It looks like Semitic writing to me. Semitic writing didn't come on the scene till about 500 BC.
So you don't believe the Talmudic writing is not the first alphabetic letters. It's not the letter that was written by Moses at the mountain.
If you look up Talmudic, the earliest that it originated, the very earliest it could have originated is 800 BC, but it's usually dated as becoming prevalent around 500 BC, Talmudic.
So which writing was used in Exodus period? I know that what Dr. Douglas Petrovich said, but Dr. Miles Jones said that was a Talmudic language.
It is. It's much later than the Exodus.
I want to know, what language was being written by Moses at the mountain.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever know, but it was some sort of Proto-Hebrew alphabet. That's all we can guess. We're never going to know exactly what letters did God used to write on the tables of stone. We're never really going to know. But it's interesting that if you look at Genesis and Adam and Eve, that you have to guess, well, what language did they speak? The structure of Heva, which is the name of Eve, and Isha, wife, those names which Adam used strongly indicate that they used a type of Hebrew.
This is the, Douglas Petrovich's letter here in this book, that between the 1560 to 1307, this is the letter that was being used at the mountain. And then this becomes the ancient old Hebrew language. So he's saying that the world oldest alphabet is Hebrew. Actually, Moses wrote this writing.
Yeah, I don't have any quarrel with that idea at all. And of course, the early Hebrew was pictorial. At Aleph was the head of a cattle, and Beit was a house. It was a pictorial, very logical alphabet. Interesting topic.
I want to make my, a PhD dissertation either analyzing more about the Yamsuf or writing system. I don't know. I have not decided yet. But I really enjoy my study in Liberty right now. I'm taking 3 classes right now. One is the biblical exposition classes. That's the
Right.
just about the Bible exegesis thing. I really enjoy it. And then I took the Hebrew language. I took the Greek language. I really enjoy it.
A lot of work there. Now, for me, I studied Hebrew for 4 years preceding this whole Exodus thing, because I sat next to a rabbi on a bus in Jerusalem, and we're talking about the Exodus, and he said, you ought to study Hebrew so you can read the language that it was originally described in. And then I studied in synagogues for 4 years, and there are some key grammatical things that it helped me with for sure. But that was my initial building a base for studying the Exodus.
The other day I visit the Taima area. Saudi Arabia friend showed me a lot of inscription and writing on the rock, and I took a lot of picture, and really want to decode those, what is about, and right, because not many people found those area. Okay, Dr. Glen, very nice talking to you, and then really productive day today.
Well, God bless you, and stay healthy yourself.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
성경의 현장을 찾아가는 여기는 갱한 TV. 성경의 현장을 찾아가는 여기는 갱한 TV. From Egypt 노예의 삶을 끝내고 홍해를 건너 물샘 가득한 리무지나 불과 구름 기둥 따라 광야 지나 마침내 다 다른 시내산을 하나님의 음성이 들리는 곳. 살아계신 하나님의 말씀은 진실된 믿음의 기록. 우리는 진리의 길을 찾아가는 엑소두스 아카데미.